Okay, we will go ahead and get started. Welcome to our regular City Council meeting tonight, Tuesday, July 8th. And we are grateful to Elder Max Johnson, who is here to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Will the audience please rise? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Thank you so much for that. We would now like to ask Pastor Jim. Pastor Jim from the Bountiful First Baptist Church is here tonight. We're so grateful that you're here, and thank you for all of your service. And he will offer our opening prayer.
Thank you, Mayor Harris, City Council members. It's a privilege to be here. First Baptist Church has been around for a long time. We will be celebrating our 68th year as a church this come September. So we're around and we're here to stay. So I want to thank you and your council members' support over the many years. So, dear Heavenly Father, we are grateful to be in your presence. We are grateful for this time and for this meeting that is about to be held. Lord, I pray that you're giving the mayor and council members and all parties concerned the wisdom, knowledge, and ability, Lord, to carry out city business. I pray, Lord, that you're giving guidance and wisdom where needed, and strength and courage, Lord. So, Father, we turn this time over to you, and we ask this in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Jim. We will now have our public comment period. We would love to hear from anyone that would like to speak. You have 2 minutes. If you wish to speak, please come and state your name and where you live.
I'm Sydney King. I live right here in Bountiful on Maple Ridge Drive. In 2017, Bountiful City released a goals and policies document embracing a vital shopping and gathering activity space with the guiding principle to make Main Street the heart of Bountiful City and South Davis County. On page 7, chapter 3, goals and policies, the goals stated to ensure adequate parking balance with the goal of encouraging new development. To quote, on-street parking is the most efficiently utilized parking. Empty spaces are highly visible to a large number of cars. The parking is also shared by businesses within about a 1 block in any direction. On-street parking is vital in a main street to provide short-term parking to shoppers, quick access to the street-facing front doors of the businesses. On-street parking has the additional benefit of acting to slow traffic and provides a buffer between traffic and pedestrians. With the subtraction of 3 parking spaces between 100 South and 200 South Main Street, create outside eating spaces is counter to the goals the city set for itself. There are alternate options available, such as removing or reducing the size of the planter boxes in this same space, but keeping the trees, as those planter boxes will have to be reconstructed in the next few years as the infrastructure of Main Street must be upgraded according to Mayor Harris. I recognize the City Council may have had little or nothing to do with the decision to eliminate these parking spaces. I do feel, however, it is important for the City Council to recognize this is a poor decision made by the engineering department with little consideration for the businesses that give the downtown its vibrancy, and ask the City Council take action to reverse those decisions and keep the essential parking available for the customers.
Thank you. Feel free to email us if you ran out of time. Thanks. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Ron Mortensen, Bountiful. I just wanted to comment on some of the slides you were looking at earlier on in the work meeting. I notice you're using the Kempsey Gardner slides, And the one thing to be aware of as a Kempsey Gardner Public Policy Institute is it does have a bias to unlimited growth and development. And if you're going to look at their advisory committee, you'll find out the biggest developers in the state of Utah are on that. And so I just ask you to, when you look at this data, to take careful consideration of where it's coming from and the bias that it may have in it. And I know the legislators rely on that, but don't be afraid to push back and to question it. They just put out a new study, by the way, today. It looks like it came out, and it says a larger number of sellers entering Utah's market in 2024's average monthly listings returned to pre-COVID listings. Home sales also received a boost from cash buyers who were not deterred by higher mortgage rates. Nearly 18% of home sales in Utah were cash purchases. And when you see cash purchases, many times that is an investment company buying those homes and taking those homes out of the private market. Thank you.
Thanks for that comment. Anyone else here to speak tonight?
John Blocker, Sandy City resident. I work for a home builder, and I appreciate the time you guys took to talk about affordable housing in the city. I think it's extremely important. I've worked with your guys' staff on a few projects, and you guys have incredible staff who really look out for the city. And I think trusting them is a really wise approach to your guys' methods as you thoughtfully build out the city that's mostly built out. What I'd just like to say is, as you're making decisions for approving of housing units, it's really easy to just think from our perspective. But if you think most of these people, that renter number, if you believe the data or not, I can't imagine most of them wouldn't want to buy a house. And the more housing that we can approve, the more housing that's available to buy. So we're not just, with the supply and demand discrepancy or spread we're seeing right now, we're just kind of skimming the cream off the top of people that can actually afford the housing units that are available, as opposed to getting to the depth of the people that need housing in Utah. Some things that a couple things that were talked about, like what can we do? I think approving deed-restricted housing that limits investors could be something that maybe like density bonuses or other things that incentivize developers to build more housing. Deed restriction could be a really good tool that I've seen used in other cities. Provo's doing a project right now to try to get housing for city staff, firefighters, teachers, police officers, and that's what they're targeting, and that's the tool that they're implementing. So just one tool that I think we could use.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, we will move to council reports. And tonight, Councilwoman Bradshaw, will start with you.
Mayor, I'd just like to take the opportunity to alert our residents to the fact that Summerfest, which is put on and hosted by the Bountiful Davis Arts Center, is going to be August 8th and 9th this year, one of our major city festivals, kind of the one that closes out the summer season. This year, the festival will be moving back to Bountiful City Park on 4th North to take advantage of the larger stage and the shade that that park provides for both the performers and the audience. But there still will be some robust class offerings, and in fact some unique class offerings tied to Summerfest at the BDAC building on Main Street. So they'll be working to kind of have the connectivity between the performances taking place at the park and the opportunity for some special classes tied to that Summerfest festival taking place at the Arts Center. So don't forget to put it on your calendars.
Thank you. Councilman Higginson.
Mayor, thanks. I think that I'll reserve my comments and report for when those planning commission items come up on the agenda, if that's okay.
Great, thank
Thank you.
you. Councilwoman Price Hewish.
Thank you, Mayor. I just really want to start out with a huge shout out to the Streets Department and all, I know that this is not an isolated effort, but many departments are involved in so many of the building projects that are happening around town. And I know when we encounter them, they feel disruptive, but then the end result is so great. And if you just want to drive down 500 South today, it's really awesome. And way late last night, they were out there paving and rolling and working, and it's just great. So I want to shout out because I think the frustration can get high when you're having to detour or winnow down to one lane, but then when it's done, it's great. And all the departments that are involved in that. So thank you. I also want to invite everybody to go to the farmers market. It's only been open now a couple of weeks, but it is the just joyful place to be in Bountiful on a Thursday night. There's music and food and people and community, and you will see somebody or you might make a new friend, and there's cool stuff and great produce. Also, I want to recognize as my job or my assignment on the Power Commission. That is just such a wonderful thing that I am allowed to do. And speaking with our power director a little earlier today, he confirmed that squirrels continue to be a problem around the city, and my dogs personally love the squirrels, so we have a love-hate relationship with squirrels at our house. And we're selling a lot of power because the heat. And I would also just like to report that the Bountiful City Health Coalition will be convening next week for the first time, and we'll be looking at strategies and goals to work toward and attain our Healthy Utah Community designation. So, and I'm going to leave the rest of my time about the BCYC for our BCYC City Manager, Johnny Alley.
Great. Let's hear it, Johnny.
Thank you. Hi, as Cecily said, I'm Johnny Alley. I'm the City Manager for the City Youth Council. And I got to say, I'm really excited for this year's group. You know, we just kind of got in the last month. They all seem anxious to make a difference in the community, and they're ready to create an engaged council, so I'm really looking forward to it. This past June, we had 2 community events and 2 general planning meetings. On June 3rd, we had a general planning meeting and get to know you event. That went well. From the 4th to the 7th, BCYC members volunteered to help the Joy Foundation at the Chalk Art Festival, which was a huge success. Our members helped run kids' games, pass out food and water to the artist, and provide assistance at the information tent. I was there myself. It was lots of fun. On June 17th, we had a general planning meeting and then took 15 members directly after the meeting to the Bountiful Food Pantry to help with sorting and handing out food. That was also a great experience, and the pantry invited us to come back whenever we want to. And that's all for June. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bountiful City Youth Council, we're really glad to have you here representing that group and the amazing things you guys do. I just wanted to report that today I had the honor of going to the funeral and the burial ceremony for First Lieutenant George Frankie Wilson. And it's such an amazing, unique opportunity today that we had 81 years ago today. He was shot down in France, and his remains were discovered recently and brought home. He was a Bountiful, Utah resident. And hearing about his story was incredible. As he was shot down in his plane in France, he was navigating the plane, and he was in a formation with other planes, so he had to be very careful to not hit other planes, and so he navigated flying so that he wouldn't hit into other planes as he was shot down, and then he proceeded to give his parachute because they were one down for a parachute, and so he made sure that everyone who was on his plane was safely evacuated with parachutes. Then he also steered clear of a little village as to not hurt anyone there before he then crashed and was killed. And so what a hero. It was it was amazing. I got to talk to some of his descendants, and he was laid to rest in the Bountiful Cemetery today after 81 years. And so big thanks to everyone who is involved. Ron Mortensen has done a lot for the Veterans Foundation, and his name's on the wall there, along with his dad, and his family was excited to go and see that. And so anyway, it was a wonderful celebration, and it just reminded me of how important each person is and how he was so respected and remembered 81 years later. So it was a great opportunity. Councilwoman Child, do you have a report?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make sure everyone knows that Bountiful Handcart Days will be July 25th and 26th. That's after Days of 47 parade on the 24th. On the 25th, there will be a concert in the park. It's Roy Rivers, who is a John Denver impersonator. Is that the right way to say that? Tribute, thank you, that's a better word. And he's great. And there will be activities in the park all evening, Friday, all day and evening, and all day on Saturday. The parade will be at 9 a.m., and I'm getting very excited for that parade. We've got 14 floats coming, we've got 9 bands, we've got 8 horse entries. It's going to be great. 90 entries total, I believe. So bring your umbrellas, bring some shade. So we're glad for all of the volunteers who are putting that together, and for the city for providing the police and garbage removal and things like that. That's it.
Thank you so much. We will now consider approval of expenditures greater than $1,000 paid on June 18th and 25th, 2025.
Move to approve those as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. And now it's my pleasure to honor Mae Johnson, and I'm just wondering if her and her mom, Molly, would be willing to come up to the microphone. So Mae Johnson, for those of you who don't know, she's a Bountiful High School graduate, and I have a certificate for you, Mae, and I'm just going to read it. It's Certificate of Recognition presented to Mae Johnson by the Mayor and City Council in recognition of your outstanding athletic achievement as a top national long jumper. Your dedication, talent, and hard work have brought pride to our community and serve as an inspiration to others. There was a time where she was the top in the nation. So if you don't mind just telling us a little bit about what you've accomplished and your experience. If you would speak into the microphone.
But it's hard to decide like who to look at, right? Because I'm like, I want to look at all of you, but then I'm like, there's my family, hello, and our friends.
Yeah, so I did the high jump.
It's high jump. It is high jump,
yeah.
not long jump, but.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Thank you.
It's all jumps. It's
Okay.
all, the field
High
events
jump.
get
We're going to
mixed up.
change this.
Field
You're
events
good.
do get mixed up.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mae, do you want to tell them a little bit about?
Yeah, so I do the high jump for track. I just won state for my second year in a row.
Mae, show them your rings.
Guys, my rings. I got three from my basketball states and then 2 from track. But I just went to nationals, which was really fun. I'm committed to BYU for track and field, so I'll be going there in the fall.
Yay.
It's exciting. So kind of like what the mayor was talking about, Mae started doing high jump a little bit in like early high school, and she was jumping with her older brother just because they were tall, you know? It was like something to do on the track team. And then when Mae advanced a little bit and got higher, a little older in high school, her senior year, she finished her basketball season. It was incredible. And then my husband and I said, Mae, do you want to be serious about high jump? Should we like hire a coach and see what you can do? And so she had a personal trainer from Weber, a girl who was a senior at Weber. And once Mae had a personal coach, she just went from jumping 5'6", which is what she won state with her junior year, to jumping 5'7", 5'8", 5'9", 5'11", just incredible. So what's your PR right now?
My PR is 5'11". It was really exciting at state. I didn't jump my PR. I jumped 5'9", but I won by 6 inches, which was really cool.
Wow. That is so amazing.
But even more, May is just so loving and kind. She's a great student too. My husband and I never had to worry about, any of her homework or anything. So she's just a wonderful person. We're definitely gonna miss her as she goes. Thank heavens it's only 58 minutes to BYU. So
Wow.
thank you so much for inviting us.
Please join with me in congratulating May. May, I wanted to see if you'd be willing to come over here. We're going to gather by Councilman Higginson right here. If you're willing to stand over here in front, and then we'll just get a little picture with you. Is that okay? Would you mind, Council?
Congratulations. That's awesome. That's quite a margin of victory.
I know, it was exciting.
We need you to just split the podium as we do this picture.
Should two of us sit?
I'll do whatever you
Or all
want
of
to
us stand?
We'll all stand. When we can stand, we stand.
We stand together.
And squeeze the neck.
Absolutely, please. May's too tall for me. Can you see?
No, you gotta see the ring. Okay.
Or your bling. I got this.
That's what I do for all the nephews.
Smile, get in line, the claw.
Thank you for being here, May and Max. Elder Johnson, good luck to you as you depart, and may you really made us proud in the city of Bountiful. Thank you so much. We're really grateful that you could come and that we could honor you tonight. Okay, we will now consider approval of a liquor license for Fat Fish. Francisco.
Mayor, this is simply a change in the name, as whenever there's a change in the responsible person for that alcohol license, they need to come back to us and reapply. We have the one-pager, maybe two-pager staff report as specified in the packet. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions, but this would authorize them to move on with Department of Average. They rebranded DABS, as they're required to get their local consent from us, and then once they have the local consent, then they go and apply through the state.
Mayor, I'd be happy to make a motion that we grant local consent to Fat Fish 2 and authorize you, Mayor, without compulsion, to sign.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Child. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. And the next item, Francisco, Smoke and Bones.
Smoke and Bones, this is the first time that they apply for an alcohol license. They are located at 364 South 2nd West. We've all been there, I believe. And this is their first request. They submitted the proper paperwork. We ran that paperwork through the police department as required. We did the same for Fat Fish 2, and nothing was found to keep us from issuing their alcohol license, as they would like to start selling beer and so forth. So same thing, before they go through the state, it is required that the local municipality issues a local consent.
I had just one question. Are they applying for a beer-only license or a full restaurant license?
Bountiful City, it's the liquor license, which allows them to, it doesn't separate between beer in as far as a restaurant. So they may choose to only sell beer, but this would give them their full license.
Okay, so it's full restaurant.
It is both.
Mayor, I'm happy to make a motion to grant local consent for Smoking Bones for a restaurant liquor license.
Second.
That's seconded by Councilwoman Price Hewish. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Thank you. That passes. And now we'll move to final architecture and site plan approval and ordinance development plan. Amber Corbridge.
Mayor and council, we've got 2 items associated with this. There's 2 parts. You'll see there's an A and a B. I recommend we do B first because of the way that it's outlined in the staff report. But there'll be 2 motions made, just to be clear. But we combined them in one staff report because they go together. So I'll just present the report and then we'll do I suggest we do the 2 motions at the end. So this is for final architectural site plan approval for a mixed-use project at 2122 South Orchard Drive. The development plans have been approved. There is a discrepancy between the setbacks on the plans that are in the development plan and the text that says setbacks. So we'll go over that in a minute, but on June 17th, the commission reviewed this proposed application. They held a public hearing and they forwarded a positive recommendation with some conditions. So the setbacks, to get into the discrepancy in the development plan, the front yard setback on the site plan shows 10 feet, which is what we approved and we moved forward with recommendation of approval for. It's just that in the text of the development plan, it says 20 feet. So we're recommending that the amendment be that we change that 20 feet to 10 feet to match the site plan. So with that, first we recommend, commission and staff recommends that council review this proposed ordinance plan development amendment for Hidden Gardens and approve. And second, also review the final and architectural and site plan application for the mixed-use project, subject to the conditions listed A through D.
Thank you. I would be interested to hear from Councilman Higginson on this about the Planning Commission, but any other questions from any of you for
Mayor?
Amber or?
If I may, I guess I kind of just have a little comment about this. Because, sometimes when you see one thing, well, there was, as mentioned, the discrepancy. And so I can see that the development plan was approved for the 10-foot setback. And I think for me, there was a little bit of a confusion about what is the setback, what is actually in the code for this type of development in the first place, the 20-foot, and then the 10-foot in the development plan. So
Want to speak to that?
Yeah, I can clarify. So with a mixed-use rezone application, developer can submit a development plan setting their own setbacks, heights, even, other designs like materials, landscaping. So the setbacks were picked and submitted by the developer, which we approved of the 10-foot in the plans. We missed the change in the text to make it 10 instead of the 20.
So was it ever 20?
No.
It was never submitted
It
as
was a
20.
typo.
It was always
We're
submitted.
coming back to amend the typo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And one thing I just do want to point out is that I appreciate, this is always in your staff reports, and it's very appreciated by me to have this spelled out over and over again, where we are looking at whether this site plan approval is going to implement the policy and goals established by our general plan. And furthermore, does it promote the orderly and safe development of land in the city? And I think in this case, I feel very much so like I can answer in the affirmative on those, and that this is going to be a more productive, better use of the land in that area. So thank you for always including that, because it always brings my mind into focus about what it is we're doing. So thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions for Amber? Do you mind giving us your thoughts after having been in the Planning Commission?
Well, the report was in the staff write-up, but it passed the Planning Commission 4-0. I did not have the benefit of being in that meeting.
Oh, okay.
But I have discussed it with one of the planning commissioners since, and there was no serious discussion to the contrary. It's the crossing of a T or the dotting of an I. So
Okay.
anyway,
Okay.
I too had questions yesterday, and that conversation with the planning commissioner today helped. So
Good.
thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
I do have a question for Amber or for the applicant. Since it is a development agreement and we can come to an agreement with the developer on these setbacks, I did yesterday go take a look at that section of Orchard Drive, and this would be the only project that is at 10 feet from any of the surrounding areas. In fact, I didn't find anything that was close to that until I got to Main Street, which is obviously a very different street. So have we thought about how that might kind of feel to have something that tall, that close to the sidewalk?
When we look at mixed-use projects, we're looking to make them a little more urban, more walkable, closer to the street. So a lot of the mixed-use zoned properties are going to have closer setbacks than, say, like your multifamily zoned properties or the other commercial ones you see that are existing. So if we're looking to make changes, bringing buildings closer to the sidewalks and the streets, it's going to be a little more inviting, walkable for people, on the street.
So then my follow-up question is, Orchard is a street that it carries a lot of traffic for us. It's a significant arterial road. And as we've talked about some of our active transportation elements, Orchard is one of those that we've kind of identified where sometimes people don't feel safe as they're using it on foot or on bike or different things, because for large chunks of it, there is not a park strip. You're just sidewalk immediately adjacent to the road. And so are there elements of the plan that will help soften that, so that as a resident is transversing this section, they'll still feel the comfort they would feel if they were on a different section where the buildings next door had a different setback?
Yeah. So, if you can turn to one of the plans, I can show you. We do have a landscape plan. This is page 30 of the packet. There are some street trees right up against that sidewalk there that buffers between the building and the sidewalk area. We also have two open plaza spaces on the corners of those two buildings facing Orchard Drive, which creates an inviting walking space away from the street and into the space where the buildings and businesses will be. So those are two elements that we've seen that are compatible with it being safer and more walkable.
If I may add, Mayor, a third component that we've considered is the grade change of the site. If you look, Tyson just had that page. If you look at the grading plan on page 30, you see that even though the heights are, the higher building heights are set towards the front, it's mitigated as it slopes down and back. So even though those are 3-story buildings from the backside, it's a 2-story building from the Orchard Drive side. And I think that's a mitigating component as to the less setback. I don't say reduced setback because of the terminology in that through the legislative item and action through the review as it's vetted by staff and then the Planning Commission. This is the only zone district in the city where we have the opportunity to legislate for for a specific project. And that's why each zone change or even original zone amendment is tied to a specific development plan. And I really appreciate that process where we have public hearings and so forth and change each, the mini zoning, as I call it, for only for this project and no one else, unless the other projects or this one is able to qualify on those urban characteristics that Ms. Corbridge was referring to. So I think that third mitigator, in addition to that landscaping, is the grade change from orchard towards the rear of the property. I just wanted to add that. Thanks, Tyson. Let me take it back.
Thanks for that. What other questions do we have, Council?
I have another question just about mitigating factors. There's going to be, all of the parking for this development happens behind the buildings, for the businesses, for the commercial, for the residential. And with the, I really like the design element of having the plaza type feature on the first floor in those kind of corners with the ingress and egress, but are there any concerns when you were looking at this planning or in just your internal review about traffic and safety of the ingress and egress and those kind of large type pillars that are right, even though there's plazas, there are some fairly large pillars there?
There were no concerns, and they meet the clearance requirements of the code for driveways. So if that helps answer your question about visibility coming in and out of the development.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other questions on this? So you were recommending that we take it one item at a time?
Yeah.
And start with B, the ordinance?
Yeah.
Okay. Council, do you feel ready to move forward, or do you need more questions answered, or have any other comments?
Ready to move forward.
I think Mayor, I'm ready to move forward as well. I appreciate the answers on my questions and the fact that our staff and the developers considered some of those walkability and safety elements as they're doing the unique opportunity for a development agreement, which we don't often get to do, which I do appreciate that we've been able to help craft a better project as a result of that process. So I think I'm comfortable.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So are we doing a motion just for 2B first?
Yes.
Okay, I will make that motion.
Okay.
I move that we we approve the boundary adjustment and combine parcels as they are stated in the staff report.
I think you're on the wrong.
Am I on the wrong one?
So number 9B.
I'm sorry.
No, you're just fine. Thanks for.
That's coming up, but.
Yeah.
Wrong one? I'm
I think
going
on the
to-
agenda.
I'm backing out.
Yeah, look at the new agenda from today on your desk.
So not be on the staff report, but be on the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
Okay.
I'll
see.
take a stab and you can jump in on the next one maybe. So I'll make a motion that we
Let's do
approve
it.
ordinance 2025-10, amending the zoning and development plans.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Which is exactly what Councilmember Price Hewish would have said if she had just read what was in front of her. So we're sorry to put you off your game. Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, and then the other component of this.
Back.
I'll take a stab at it.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the final site plan.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries, and thanks very much for that. Okay, you have the next one as well, Amber, item number 10.
Yes, so we have an application
for a text amendment affecting building heights of single-family residential accessory structures. The amendment is to increase the height of both the sidewall and the overall height of the accessory structure 5 feet each. So that was what was proposed to us. On the 17th of June, the commission reviewed this proposed amendment, held a public hearing, and forwarded a positive recommendation to approve our staff recommendation with a change to the enhanced accessory structure maximum height from 25 to 28 feet. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But first, we just wanted to start off by explaining that there's a lot of limits with the heights for accessory structures, and it does affect people wanting to build an accessory dwelling unit, for example, like above a garage or even a 2-story structure if they have a small lot. So our current zone requires that these accessory structures shall not exceed 20 feet for the overall height, which is measured from average grade to about midpoint of the roof. There's more details on that in the report. Also, the sidewall is limited to a maximum of 15 feet between the average grade and the underside of the eaves of the structure. There's some diagrams in the report that help depict that. We believe that it is the best interest of this city to promote more moderate income housing options such as ADUs. This would affect the development of ADUs to have more flexibility and options, as it does become pretty challenging for ADUs, again, to be above a garage or even to be 2 stories. There's examples in the report where there's been a few proposals to the staff that we haven't been able to approve based on these restrictions. And so we think it's important to both keep our current regulations for accessory structures with the height, both the 15 for sidewall and 20 for the overall height, and add a new regulation which enhances those heights, but also we would increase the setbacks of the structure from the property line so that the impacts of those heights aren't too, I guess, negative, reflecting on neighbors nearby. So we do think it's important to protect the privacy of the neighbors, so that's why we included the setbacks for these enhanced heights for accessory structures. I have examples of other cities that we researched, and I can give that to you.
Thank you.
So as you can see, we're very similar to Draper City right now. They have similar setbacks and height to us, but there's other examples like Lehigh where they have provided an additional option to be able to go taller, but also they have an 8-foot setback that is required for a taller accessory structure. So it is happening in this area. Maybe it's not as common yet, but we do think this is a positive change in meeting our city's goals and objectives. We're happy to answer any questions regarding this amendment. We recommend approval for the changes.
Thank you.
So, Amber, I recognize that we're just glancing at these comparisons to other cities, and colleagues on the other end of the dais are just seeing them. But it looks like, with the exception of maybe Lehigh, this would make us put us in a more aggressive stance than these other cities.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to make sure.
And one thing I did want to point out is that sidewall height is not very common either. Draper City's the only one, or there was Draper and North Salt Lake that had sidewall height restrictions, whereas most cities don't regulate the sidewall height. Again, that's measured from the eave of the structure to average grade.
So maybe the limiting factor typically is the roof, the pitch of the roof?
Mm-hmm.
The top? Okay. Well, Thank you for that. So what other questions or comments do you have, Council?
So I just want to clarify, the problem that this solves is that it allows for a second story on an ADU. Because currently it's too short, the 20 feet is too short for 2 full stories.
That's an example because a lot of ADUs that can be constructed above a garage are limited on how they are designed because you still have to meet building code for height and square footage. And so that limits your design with what we have in our code. It can be done, it's just difficult to do.
Okay.
And I know that some of the discussion in Planning Commission was, they talked about would it be better to even go higher? Would it be useful to say that we go as high as the primary structure? And so I think this was viewed as kind of like a compromise, like, well, let's not go all the way up to as tall of a primary structure, but let's allow for a little more height so that there is a little more flexibility and people have a little more of a freedom to do something there.
Mayor, if I may, in a few of these cities that are referenced, like Lehigh, in Lehigh, the accessory structure cannot exceed the height of the main structure, and that is an element in a number of codes that allow for slightly larger height. In my looking at our surrounding cities, Farmington, North Salt Lake, Centerville, and Woods Cross, none of them go higher than 20 feet. And in Woods Cross, also not to exceed the primary dwelling. In Kaysville, they do allow for a little bit higher, up to 24, but that requires a 12-foot setback. I'm just going to say, I have been driving around the city with the intention of looking for and kind of just doing my own visual assessment of ADUs, external ADUs, and there are quite a few. There are quite a few that look like they're lived in. We allow this. This is allowed throughout the entire city right now with height requirements that are consistent with our neighboring cities and frankly most cities throughout the state. I understand that people would like to do something, maybe higher. Some people might want to do something higher, but what can be might not always be what ought to be. And I think that this could be something that could be a code creeper, where we look back and say, we can't go back on that. And now we have these very large accessory units going up all over our city, and I am really concerned about our community building standards and the character and aesthetic and the livability and predictability. And I respect and understand the idea of wanting people to have property rights to do things within reason on their property. But we also have these collective rights within our cities where we have a broader community and we have to look at the neighborhood scale of things. And I might be giving the impression that I'm not super enthusiastic about this, because I'm not. Because I see where we already are allowing accessory structures. People are building them. People are living in them. I don't think the intention is to build we're not increasing the ability of people to expand the footprint of what is allowed on an accessory external unit here. All we're allowing is height. And when I look at the policy, I think, well, we are allowing this. We are allowing buildable ADUs right now within what is kind of the scope of, I mean, some people might even say they're already too high. I mean, there's a whole wide range of things, of opinions of what could be looked at here. But when I consider that we would only be moving 8 feet in, I'm not sure that gives me the comfort of a mitigating factor for the height, having additional height, whereas structure, depending on the pitch of the roof, could go up to 34, 35, maybe even 36 feet to the top of the roof. And I think we're like loss of privacy for adjacent property owners, reduced sunlight, shading, views, negative visual impacts, structural dominance, and so.
Do you mind just addressing, is the height restriction the pitch of the roof?
No, it's midpoint of the roof, so,
Okay.
yeah, not the pitch.
Okay.
So,
You could go with a higher pitch to get, so if you went a higher pitch, you could go higher on the,
Well,
No.
as long as you're measuring midpoint.
right.
right, the higher the pitch, it's even more difficult to comply with the current code in how it's measured to the average, to the midpoint of the roof. And ironically, aesthetically pleasing buildings tend to have higher roof pitches. With that said, Amber and I and my team, we've been looking at this for months, in fact, maybe even years. And the request you have before you is not a staff-initiated application. It was submitted by Lisa Hicks, who is here, as she's trying to accommodate an ADU. With that said, the reason why we finally landed on that 8-foot setback for the enhanced is that it's the exact same standard for your single-family dwelling, which could be up to 35 feet. So some logic, or the logic that we use, is that if it's good enough for your house at 35 feet midpoint, why not increase the setback area, which is not, it was not proposed by the applicant. We're the one that, the applicant simply increased the heights by 5 feet, the 15 and the 20. We said, we'll do that only if you increase the setback by another 5. So we're calling it 5 for 5.
Which is the same as a single family.
Which is the same, exactly, Mayor, as the same standard for a single-family dwelling. Granted, there are different standards in that an accessory structure cannot exceed 10% of the lot, and there are many other provisions affecting one and the other, but that's why staff and ultimately the commission felt comfortable with that 8-foot setback.
Tell me, I have a question that is, when we look at an accessory structure that is flat on the ground versus an accessory structure that is on the hillside, for example, how does that change the slope when you're measuring? Is that going to be a difference in what's allowed, what's... So there's maybe an advantage if you live on a hillside.
Yeah, it does, and that's the irony in that the steeper the slope, you have an easier time accommodating two stories, based on the fact that height, as indicated in the code, is measured by average grade and the midpoint of the roof. So then, on a steeper slope, the property owner can accommodate a walkout basement on one side. And then it's got the other side, and then it meets the 20 feet. Down here, unless you build a huge retaining wall, there is no walkout basement. And therefore, this regulation further helps people that live on flatter area. And Amber put it well. It's not because you can't make it, but we've seen the challenges over and over again with designs, 2 of which are found on your packet. One of them is a really beautiful design. I guess that's opinion. And yet we had to tell her we would deny her application because it is 3 feet too tall. So you're absolutely right, Mayor, in that on the steeper the slope, ironically, people have an easier time if they accommodate a walkout basement or a walkout area for the 2-story component. Specifically addressing ADUs, they are limited at 1,250 square feet. We're not changing that.
They can't, this doesn't make them any bigger.
Correct. However, this regulation is for all things accessory structures, including accessory dwelling units. And the other thing that I should point out, accessory structures, well, no, the ADUs do fall under the purview of the administrative committee, where we review where they place their windows and access points to make sure that we can address privacy. So, and we just appointed a member to the administrative committee just this month. Yeah, that's right.
How often does the administrative committee move windows and doors to address privacy?
Not very often, because we already do it through the staff recommendation. It goes through staff. We work it out. We work things out, and we try not to be on the fly when the administrative committee is making the final action. We try to work that out based on the staff recommendation, the same way that we do all other applications before you. So I guess.
Does the applicant have to submit pictures or other drawings of their neighbors' properties about where their neighbors' windows might be, or
No.
other structures in their yard? Then how are you assessing privacy?
Great question. We pay attention based on aerial photography and they have to submit the site plan of the ADU, and then we take a look at distances and then we compare the elevations where they have the egress and egress, and we try to mitigate negative impacts by saying maybe you got to put it on this side. And in my experience, in my 6 years, everyone's willing to work with everyone because they, for the most part, want to be good neighbors.
I've got a question. Do the neighbors have an opportunity to comment, to review the plan, to comment on it?
Yes, so those, for accessory dwelling units, yes. For
At the
accessory
administrative committee.
structures, no. So
Correct.
accessory dwelling units are considered, if they're detached, they are considered a conditional use, which is a public hearing, and we notice the neighbors, we put a sign on the property so they can attend and speak to the item.
The other opportunity that they have is that the code bifurcates the standard at 10% of the lot. It's a permitted use if it's an accessory structure, unless it's an ADU, and then it goes through the administrative committee. Say if it's a garage, the code indicates that if they want to go between 10 and 15%, then it's a full-blown conditional use permit, where then the planning commission comes in. This is it's a 15% maximum footprint of the lot. If it ranges between, say, 11 to up to 15, then it goes up to the planning commission, and the planning commission holds a public hearing and so forth, and then they would have an opportunity. But if it's 10% or less and it's not an ADU, it's a permitted use via staff. Maybe that's a better way to answer your question.
So this would be the last time we would discuss this, unless we were making changes to the ordinance at some future point. So when a neighbor has a concern about the height of an ADU, an external ADU that's being built, tonight is the last night that they would be able to opine.
Yeah, this is a
Or the
legislative item.
elected officials.
Right, this is a legislative item. The staff recommendation was to bump it 5 feet plus the setback at 8 feet. Planning Commission went a step further and added another 3 feet at 28.
So were you finding, you said you've encountered this a number of times, and so you're finding that there is just a little, a few inches that seem to make a difference, a few feet, sorry, that seem to make a difference in what people are hoping they could do because of a second story. Is that
Correct.
Is that,
That is
generally
accurate.
speaking, that's true?
That is accurate.
And from what you've learned, this difference in adding 3 feet would be able to accommodate most people their ability to go 2 stories.
Yes,
The 3 feet or the 5 feet?
I was gonna clarify
Sorry.
exactly
Thank
that.
you.
And I could, if I don't, it's exactly, we were comfortable with the additional 5 feet for the maximum building height of accessory structures, from 20 to 25. The commission's recommendation was to tag on the other 3. So the standard is 20, we requested 25, commission said 28.
Okay, but they talked about even higher. They talked about,
They talked about even releasing it. I mean, they had a good, healthy discussion. They even talked about follow the same standard as a house at 35 feet. It was a good deliberation. A lot of questions from staff. Even addressing the issue about not being taller than the house like some of our other cities legislate. And by the way, the ones that have 20, I haven't researched it, but I would bet that we were the first ones to have that standard, and they probably copied us. We've had an ADU ordinance for quite some time. As Mr. Hill indicated earlier today, we changed it in 2018 before the state made us change
We
the
were
ADU
early.
ordinance. We were doing it earlier, and granted, it was even before I got here, so I don't take all the credit for that. I worked here as an intern back in 2005. We had the exact same language back in the day. I would not be, let me phrase it this way. I would not be surprised if the other cities around us simply copied our
Borrowed
standard.
some language,
Our
yeah.
standard from back in the 90s.
Sure,
I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
yeah.
Well, I would be surprised just because they don't have sidewall restrictions, and a number of them say that the height is the point of the roof, whereas we are roof to point, or what is it?
Midpoint, midpoint.
The midpoint. So
Average
we
to midpoint.
actually have a different standard than most cities as how we measure. So when we say 20-foot height requirement, we're actually allowing higher already, because a number of cities are counting that height at the very tip of the roof, or if it's a flat roof, just the flat roof. I feel like the case in point here, where the example, and I think you said it, that was the applicant's rendering there, that was 22, and we've gone to 25, and planning has returned to us with 28. And I think, I'm not sure, most people are not getting the ability to build an ADU in an accessory, exterior structure. There are a lot of them. And I'm concerned about, well, I guess I have a question. Again, in the cities that do allow for more seem to be asking for this no exceeding of the primary dwelling height, because what you see around our city is you have neighborhoods that have like an integrous feel to them, where most of the homes are, in one neighborhood might be 1960s all brick one-story ramblers, and so a 35-foot structure there would be very, very structurally domineering, and I think would significantly impact the surrounding neighbors. But I guess my question is, when you say you've been looking at this for months, if not years, did you ever consider bifurcating this? Because, like, if this were to go ahead tonight, like if it were to, there's a vote and we move forward with this, this is the same standard for garages as ADUs, as anything else, as storage, and garages certainly don't, from ones I've seen, they're usually not, architecturally sensitive, and we could have garages going up to, this very high height, or if it were flatter roof, at least, over 25 feet to account for the additional pitch on the roof. Did you guys consider that, bifurcating this?
We did consider this both internally through our staff, and we had a robust discussion with the Planning Commission about exactly that. And ultimately, the commission decided to move on for everything, the whole works, all things accessory structures, with that 28-foot added restriction.
Mayor, could I make some comments?
Please.
First of all, if property owners want to provide garage parking to their future tenants or the future residents of their ADU, they're not able to have a full garage and then a full footprint ADU on top of it. What you end up with is finished attic space that typically or oftentimes is 40% reduced from what the square footage of the footprint of the property is. So what we're doing is we're pushing the ADU parking out onto the sidewalk or onto the driveway next to the sidewalk and denying them the opportunity to either provide garage parking for the ADU residents or additional garage parking for themselves. Additionally, this is actually accomplishable, and I was an applicant a couple of years ago on this same point. There is a way to skirt the city's code right now by putting a barn roof on your project, and we don't want to turn Bountiful into a barn roof community. But you literally can have a 35-foot house, 35-foot high peak, if you run your barn roof most of the way to the ground, the way the code says that we measure height. I mean, there are ways around it. I think it's thoughtful of us to consider this and to be wary of it. I think that it's more important for us to provide better housing options, off-street parking options, architecturally more pleasing options, and approve what the Planning Commission, who, by the way, is a pretty darn good group of folks who know their stuff, and approve what they have recommended. That's my opinion. I mean, the recommendation of staff to go to, or of the Planning Commission to go to 28 feet in height, the move back from 3 feet to 8 feet. And by the way, you can build a 35-foot ADU right now 3 feet off the property line with that barn roof, with that gambrel roof.
So this is more protective.
Absolutely it is. And it provides better, again, it provides better housing options, more architecturally pleasing options for the neighborhood, and it provides better options for the homeowner.
Any other thoughts, questions, comments?
With all due respect to my colleague at the other end of the dais, I really, I'm not sure I buy that that the current standards are so limiting to a 2-story ADU. I have 2 family members, one that has a detached garage ADU and one that has an accessory structure detached with an office over the garage. And both of them have been able to live within our current ordinance of detached accessory structures that are 2 stories. And so I'm struggling to connect, and both of them have significant parking in those garages. Both of them can accommodate 4 cars.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Having the garage, but then having a full footprint above it.
And I guess that's the challenge. They have those full footprints. They have very nice.
They don't have the full footprint. And by the way, how tall is the tallest of your brother's structures?
I haven't measured them, but they would be compliant with our ordinance as
Absolutely.
measured at the midpoint.
But they're tall.
They're tall, and that's why I'm uncomfortable going taller. They're both in a neighborhood that is predominantly single-story homes. One of them happens to have a 2-story home, but the homes around them are single-story homes, and those structures have met the current ordinance, but I think they are tall for that neighborhood, and to go taller, I think, would be very impactful.
Shading to the neighbors, imposing on the neighbors' yards. Would you say that?
Well, they, depending on the time of day, they are going to give them some shade, but they also have windows that are definitely at a second story overlooking those backyards.
And you never have to apologize to me for having a different opinion.
I know I don't. That's what I love about you down there on the North Rift. But I'm not as comfortable with what the Planning Commission has recommended. I do think that external ADUs are the next frontier that the legislature will take on in the 2026 session. They've already signaled it in some of the discussions over the interim. And so I'd much rather we are thoughtful and careful. I do think as you go up in height, I do think it's wise that the staff has recommended that we step back from property lines. If somebody is building a single-story accessory structure that is intended to not be living space, that's intended as a garage or storage or their woodworking shed, having that be closer to the property line to me doesn't feel as it's as impactful. If it's going to be intended to be living space 24/7 and be on a second story, stepping those back to be more into this, interior of the yards off of the property lines seems to me to be something that will help the neighbors, feel less of the impact. So I was happy to see the staff recommend that and happy that the Planning Commission included that as part of their recommendation. Going taller, certainly taller than the staff recommended and the applicant requested, is something I don't feel incredibly comfortable with. And since we're just tonight getting data from surrounding cities, I'm even probably less comfortable moving forward today and not having had enough time to absorb the data of what surrounding cities are doing. It seems to me that maybe we would need to have a discussion about whether our ordinances changes how we measure. If we're really an outlier on sidewall heights and measuring at the midpoint, maybe we ought to be just getting something that feels much more standard and easier for folks to understand, and that also gets us an aesthetically pleasing outcome in terms of design. Throwing no shade on barn-style roofs, though.
The governor will not be happy with you.
The governor is often not happy with me.
So thanks for sharing that. So do you know, Richard or Francisco or Amber, what is a typical height requirement for 2 stories? What is typical? Is there such a thing? I mean, if someone's a builder and they're saying, I need X amount of feet for 2 stories.
It simply depends on the structural member of the floor joist, as well as whether you want to stick to the typical 8-foot ceiling or go higher than that. And I don't want to get into that. In that you can structurally do anything you want, but if you have enough money.
It's typically 19 or 20 feet, and then you add the roof to that. So.
For 1 story?
For 2 stories.
For 2 stories.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, 19 or 20 feet, and then add the roof. Okay. Well, council, is there a motion? Is there a different motion than what we have before us here? A different proposal, recommendation? What do you want to try?
Well, if no one else is going to jump, I'll propose a failed motion that we adopt ordinance number 2025-11 as has been presented by our planners.
Is there a second? Okay, thanks for trying.
Absolutely, Mayor. Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Is the applicant here still? I assume they are. Throw a gambrel roof on it and you'll be golden. So. Oh. Oh, you can.
If I could address just a little bit concerning that, because all of those things are, but I know.
Mayor, if we're going to have public comment, it would be nice if they could
Yeah.
come to the
Yeah, if you
podium.
just would come to the microphone, thank you. There are people listening online, so then we can all hear.
Thanks for listening, and a couple of concerns concerning the ADU. When we made the application for the sidewalls for 20 versus the 15, it was so that we could put a non-flat roof or a barn roof on it to make it an architectural home that someone would live in. The two-story allows less space of a footprint that would allow us to actually take up less green space in Bountiful, not to exceed the resident dwelling being 35. We were only asking for 25. And it was just so it could be not your run-of-the-mill, buy from a magazine, but actually something architectural that either aging parents or adult children could actually make a home in. I know you've seen the ADUs that are the one-story, and those are around 800, and it's just newly gone to the 1250. That's enough to give somebody a home to stay in. And that's been our total goal in this area, is to keep our children close, to give them a housing consideration issue without having to go dense housing. We're on an acre. We're able to comply with all of this, and the 8 feet back. When you meet with the AC, and I don't know which member of the city council is meeting with the AC, but that is the time that they go over all of the privacy issues that would go into a neighborhood. But at the end of the day, if I've set back my time, set back from the property line, and I'm doing the codes, I should be allowed to build something that is beautiful. And that's why I went ahead, and Francisco was like, we've been talking about this for about a year. But they had so many things ahead of them that when I made the application, that brought the issue to the top. And that's why they were dealing with it. And he goes, this is not new. He goes, I have had to deny incredible ADUs because they didn't comply with the 15 wall, the sidewall. I have no intention of going past 25 on my entire height. And I think that is something that, I live on the flat. I do not live on the hill. If I lived on the hill, I would not be having this conversation with you. It would be all compliant. But because I don't, that's why I'm asking for the modification.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Anyone else have any other questions or comments or a motion that you want to propose? I don't know if there's an appetite for opting for a different height than what was proposed, or?
I know it always makes our staff so excited when we make modifications on the fly.
But?
There's not a but, because I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
But I am going to have a suggestion and a request, and if colleagues like it, perhaps this can be on the next agenda. I would like to see them modify the ordinance to include the setbacks that they have proposed in the staff report. I would like to see them come up with an ordinance that gets us to an overall 25 feet, but doesn't have us dealing with the sidewall issues. It figures out a measurement system that makes it follow closer to where other cities seems to be heading, and not having the complex calculations between the sidewall and the midpoint and those types of things. And because I think that would be complicated to make an emotion on the fly and make sure that that was right, I would be more comfortable if we asked them to bring something like that for the next meeting.
Okay, so you want to ask to table this, and with that homework for?
It would certainly be good to know if there was a straw poll of colleagues that felt like that was a direction they would support, because it's certainly not worth asking staff to put time into something like that if I'm the only one who
You're
feels
right.
more comfortable with
Can I
that
ask
direction.
a clarifying question before you do your straw poll on that? Because that might help. Are you looking at, it sounds like you want a total height of 28 feet, which would mean a different measurement of not the average of the midpoint of the roof. Is that what you're after? Is it a different measurement system?
Yeah, I'm definitely not interested in going with as aggressive a height measurement as the Planning Commission recommended. I'm interested in being at a total height that is what the staff recommended. But as I looked at, Centerville has limits that say it's 20 feet, but it doesn't include parapets and skylights and steeples and chimneys. And, you know, Kaysville has something different, and Layton is 14 feet to the peak of the roof, and it feels like we need something that just is easy to understand of what's the total height you can get to for something that's reasonably 2 stories.
Are you
I think that
recommending?
also addresses Richard's concern of these gambrel roofs, or am I saying that right? Yeah. People are building those 35 feet because of how the pitch of that roof is. And as I was looking at other cities, it seemed most cities are using that overall height. And I think it's more clear, it's easier to measure, so I would like to see that, and I
Okay.
would support that, and I would also like to see I think these are 2 different animals. You have garages or storage units, and then you have structures that are going to be used as homes. And I think it would just make a lot of sense to have this be bifurcated, where it's not exact. I mean, they're just different beasts.
So council, we need, if we're going to ask staff to go to work and do other things, we need to be able to be very clear and give good direction. So what's your feeling about any of this?
So I think my hesitation here is I'm understanding where you're coming from with wanting to make something more beautiful, and I'm all for that. My hesitation is the impact this will have on neighbors, on neighborhoods. I do like the Lehigh ordinance that says limited to no taller than the principal structure. I think that may help protect neighborhoods. That I think is the downside. I think we have the ADUs already, which is allowing for extra housing. So this is more of a cosmetic thing, I believe, and that's both positive and negative. So I think the extra 3 feet thrown on by the Planning Commission is a little confusing to me.
I think the way I understood it was they were debating different heights, and you know, they had talked about 25. They had talked about, what's the single family limit?
35.
35. And so I think they were just trying to kind of come up with a compromise of somewhere in the middle that wouldn't match single family home, but that would.
Mayor, there's actually a more specific reason why
Okay.
they went 28 instead
Yeah.
of 25 that Lloyd can explain.
Okay, let's hear it.
It was to accommodate those steeper pitch roofs. That was really the genesis of the increase. And maybe just for the benefit of discussion, I've been sitting here doing a little napkin math. For a modular width of a garage, let's just say 24 feet. That's a real convenient number because you measure roof pitches typically in like a 412, so it would rise 4 feet and 12 feet. If you had a 24-foot wide garage, even with an 812 pitch roof, that's a fairly aggressive roof pitch. Your overall building height is about 24 feet. So the 25-foot height was, I think, fairly accommodating. The increase to 28 really allowed the increase to steeper roof pitches and increased internal wall heights. So in order to accommodate, as it's already been mentioned, some parking underneath, if you wanted a kind of a full height standard garage, you'd need about 11 feet from the floor to the ceiling to accommodate your overhead door. You need about a foot, an extra foot, and that would give you roughly 9 feet for structure, floor structure, and then 8 feet tall living space. So that's about a 20-foot tall sidewall. And then if you go to that 812 pitch at 24 feet wide, you're about 24 feet high. It's right on the staff's original number.
Interesting. That's good information. Thank you.
Was my colleague on the south end there recommending removal of the sidewall restriction and just going with the 25-foot height restriction?
I'm concerned, and I would be very interested to hear our staff and our city engineer's recommendation. I don't want to be in the business of picking what style roofs people put on their structures. I have my personal opinions of which roofs and shapes and shingle colors, and if I got to pick those things, my neighbors' houses would be different colors and different shapes. I don't get to pick those things, and I don't want us to be picking those things. But I also don't want people to game our system by picking a certain roof type that allows them to game the restrictions that are meant to be a protection for the whole of the community and for the whole of that neighborhood. And so I'm worried that by having both sidewall heights and the mid-roof, that we're encouraging people to game the system with a certain roof type, rather than what I think we're aiming for, which is something that doesn't feel like it's overly tall and overly imposing in a single-family neighborhood, where now that it'll appear that there are two homes on one lot. For a side note tangent, I think that our community has managed to reasonably well embrace internal ADUs. And part of the reason, my personal theory on why that has been possible, is because those internal ADUs maintain, by requirement, the look and feel of a single-family home. And so for the most part, neighbors don't really know or notice that something has changed, that there may be two families living next door where there was one family living before. I think the difference for an external ADU is it becomes much more apparent that there are two distinct families and two distinct properties to a certain extent now next door. And so I think, when our planning commission and our staff tell us, about the things we're supposed to look at, that overall feel and connectedness within the community, I think, is important. And so that is why I feel if there are games being played on which roof types to pick in order to maximize, but our goal is just to figure out a height that feels reasonable within the vast majority of our single-family neighborhoods, whether you're on the flats or in the hills or in the middles. To me, seems like the better public policy to aim for.
So do you think we could accomplish that by having just a general height restriction as opposed to dealing with sidewalls?
To me, it seems so, but I'm not an engineer or a city planner, so I'm open to having that idea and thought pattern challenged. But we had a suggestion from the other end of the dais that an applicant could accomplish something with a certain roof type, and that, to me, is all the evidence that we need that you can game it right now with a certain roof type rather than the overall goal.
Could I interrupt?
Please.
I don't know how being code compliant is gaming the system.
I
mean, you used the words game the system 5 to 8 times in that last comment, and I don't know how being compliant with our code is gaming the system.
But you said yourself you can get around it, right? Like you said.
You can have a full footprint upstairs ADU by using a gambrel roof. You can do that according to our code and be code compliant, no game involved.
Sure.
You just design it that way.
So back to
Councilmember Bradshaw knows better than any of us that probably in the next legislative session, external ADUs are going to be declared by right for every property anyway.
So point well taken, point well taken, point well taken. Back to the issue at hand, do we want to give staff direction that tells them what to come back with? Are we okay with saying we are open to considering a proposal where there's a 25-foot height restriction and no sidewall restriction?
Even I can enthusiastically support that.
Can you support that, Councilwoman Child?
Yes, I support that.
Okay, Councilwoman Bradshaw?
I've spent a lot of time talking, so I'll defer to what my other two colleagues want. In fact, I think the ends have spent a lot of time talking. I'd love to hear from the middles.
I just want to make sure that we're clear on this, that we're talking about an overall height requirement, and that's what that it will be measured at the peak or the flat, whatever type of roof it is. To me, that is more clear and actually more in line with what is happening with cities all along the Wasatch Front. Most of them measure from peak to the peak. And then I think we take out this whole idea of what is, gamed or not gamed, or code compliant or not. I mean, it's just so much more clear. So I support that. I also would really like to see this bifurcation of dwelling structures versus garages. I think they are different. So.
Thanks.
Could we have the staff's opinion on
Yeah.
bifurcation? You've raised it twice. I'd just be curious.
Yeah.
If it's something the staff thinks is hard to do or not hard to do or helpful or not helpful.
Okay.
I think Amber's going to address that. I do want to address a little bit about the sidewall in order to help you make the best public policy. But I
Thank
think,
you.
Amber, did you want to go first, or did you want me to handle this?
You can do yours first.
The only apparent purpose of the sidewall restriction that we deduced based on the code itself is that they didn't want a 20-foot accessory structure with a flat roof. That's why Amber and I wrestled on this for quite some time. And what the sidewall accomplishes is form.
However,
So-
I just drove by one today that's pretty new, flat roof. And, I mean, it's hard, that's happening though. I mean, these flat roof, gambrel roofs,
So-
whatever, they're,
I'm just telling you the opinion of why it was legislated as such, to provide form. Otherwise, you would be able to see one big 20-foot box. So it was a 15-foot, so then it could create some sort of form. That's why we stuck to it. And I'm just sharing this information so when,
Sure.
when you direct us, we have the right guidance and direction. The second part, the reason why we measure at midpoint is because the code tells us to measure at midpoint for the main house. So we wanted to remain consistent in that we don't want to confuse staff or even the applicant with a new project where house you're measuring to the midpoint, but your ADU or your accessory structure, we're going to have a brand new structure. And no, we didn't do our research with those same cities to see how they measured single-family dwellings. We only jumped to the measurement of accessory structures. So I don't know if they are consistent in their standards or not. We could obviously do the research and see if they're consistent or not. But that's the reason why we kept it at the midpoint, is that is how the code already tells us we're supposed to measure a height of a main dwelling is at the midpoint. So we wanted to keep that aspect consistent. Now, regarding bifurcating the accessory structure, the maximum height for all things ADU versus all things that are not ADU, that is not hard for us to come back with language for you to consider. That's easy for us to bifurcate. No.
okay.
That won't take long.
Amber, or excuse me, do you want to let Amber have a
Yes,
crack
I
at that?
would. She's the project manager, but
Well,
no.
we both are, but I presented it, and yes, he's right. We can probably find a way to just have standards for ADUs within the ADU code that addresses setbacks, heights, just like we regulate square footage.
Thank you.
I guess, is there a reason not to?
Well, because there's other standards applicable to accessory structures that should also apply to ADU structures. So that's why we direct everyone to the accessory structure code, because there's other things to look at.
So could I ask this question? Could you take everything that an accessory structure requires and move it into an external ADU, new definition and ordinance section, which would then have some additions that accessory structures don't have about height? so that you were not missing any of the things that would
Yeah,
otherwise
we
be
could do that.
important from having an additional building on your lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So, after getting that information from Francisco about why they set it up with the way they did with the sidewall discussion, does the council feel still inclined to ask them to disregard the sidewall and to have a maximum height? Or do you want to give direction for some other way of looking at the height?
I'm still comfortable with that.
Comfortable with maximum.
Okay, 2 people over here that are comfortable with the maximum height.
I'm comfortable. I understand that it could mean a 25-foot square box. And again, if I were the city's lead designer and everyone had to conform with my design standards, we wouldn't necessarily build square boxes, but I'm comfortable that someone may pick that.
Okay, Councilwoman Child?
Comfortable with that.
Okay.
And Mayor, may I just
Yes.
say, I'm going to say I just shared this with Amber before the meeting. There is a intriguing standard in Kaysville that they have a 45-degree angle rule where you can go up to 24 feet, but you have to maintain a 45-degree angle. So the setbacks are a little further. They're 12-foot setbacks. So, I mean, there are a lot of intriguing, interesting ways to skin this cat that might allow for just looking at the more broad and collective rights of all people who are impacted. It's not just the property owner, again, who is wanting to build the structure. It is the entire neighborhood. It's all the adjoining, neighboring homeowners that are being impacted.
Thank you. Okay, so staff, council is, just to make sure that you feel comfortable, and correct me, council, if this is not right, but we are asking you to come back with a standard that would be 25 feet as a height maximum, and that there would be a bifurcation of sorts where you have an ADU standard that also meets with it, that fits within the standard of the.
I think we're suggesting a bifurcation
Mhm.
because there's a thought that maybe an accessory structure that is not an ADU doesn't need to be this tall. Maybe the height requirements are fine as is for a non-living intended accessory structure.
Okay, is that the way the council feels? Okay, do you feel like we have given you adequate direction if we table this?
Yeah, but I think we need a motion for
Yes,
this,
we do.
don't we?
We do need a motion.
I'll make a motion at the end. I think.
We do need a motion. I just,
Everyone was clear.
yes,
Let me rephrase if I can.
sure.
Standards are not changing for non-ADU accessory structures. But you will consider going up to 25 feet, maximum height measured from the peak on an ADU. We're going to retain the 8-foot setback on that kind of building. And we're going to bifurcate the code so that we have our ADU section and our non-ADU section.
Yes,
Okay.
Yes.
And just for clarity's sake, we're going to measure the roof, we're going to measure the height of ADUs differently than we measure the height of homes.
yes, that's right, with a maximum height.
ADUs be measured at the peak, and everything else will be measured at the midpoint of the roof. That's what I'm hearing.
If that is confusing for the staff, if the staff gives us feedback that
we
they
got
would
it.
like to measure accessory structures in a non-habitable accessory structures in a different way, I'd love to hear their feedback. But if they've been comfortable interpreting that, then it doesn't bug me to leave them measured in 2 different ways. It'll be like inches and centimeters in the code together. It'll be great.
Measuring in two different ways is confusing for staff and the public. And it's always better to measure the same way. But we can accommodate that if you want.
I think when there are so many steps that people go through for an ADU, they are going through the administrative committee, then planning. I think, and we have an application that can explain this. I feel comfortable with it.
Okay, well, if the council feels okay about that direction for staff, then I will entertain a motion.
We're not amending the current ordinance. We're bringing something completely back.
Right.
So the current motion is already failed by motion.
Lack of a second.
By lack of a second and lack of support, yes.
So we're now making a motion to table it?
I think we're just going to make a motion to move on to the next item on the agenda.
Okay.
Unless, of course, you want us to make a motion to go ahead and amend it all right now, because I know how much, okay.
Thanks.
I second the motion, if you made one.
We appreciate our attorney helping us guide through this. Okay, so we will move on to our next item on our agenda. And that is to, also for Ms. Amber Corbridge, item number 11, consider approval of ordinance 2025-12.
So this amendment is to come in compliance with the Utah State Senate Bill 104, which now requires municipalities to have a procedure for boundary adjustments. These are formerly known as lot line adjustments. And the Planning Commission reviewed this on June 17th. They held a public hearing and forwarded a positive recommendation to the City Council. The attached drafted ordinance meets the requirements of the code. And we recommended in those changes that the planning director and city engineer are designated as the land use authority for these types of applications. Previously, lot line adjustments were reviewed by the City Council. That's now changing to where simply it's a staff review as an administrative item. With that, we recommend approval with the drafted amendment.
Mayor, could I ask a question?
Please.
Amber, this is not for a lot split?
No,
this
no.
is just adjustment between different owners?
Correct.
Of two separate parcels?
It could also be a lot consolidation, though.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, I would make a motion that we, my last motion was so bad. Okay, that we approve the land code text amendment and, oh my gosh. Sorry, we approve the draft ordinance number 2025-12.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you so much. And now do we have, oh, great. Okay, we have Lieutenant Andrew Smith here with us for our next item to consider approval of the purchase of 6 police vehicles.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. I'm requesting the approval of a purchase for 6 police vehicles. Funding for these vehicles was in the fiscal year 2026 budget. The vehicles to be purchased for the Bountiful Police Department are 1 Dodge Durango, which will be assigned to the Patrol Division. The vehicle will be purchased from the Young Automotive Group for $40,930. No other bids were attempted due to Young Automotive having the state contract on this vehicle. The second is 3 Ford F-150s, which will be assigned to supervisors in the Patrol Division. These vehicles will be purchased from Young Automotive, 2 in the amount of $47,375 and 1 for $55,875. The difference in the cost is the third F-150 will be assigned to the South Davis Metro SWAT team leader. It's got a shell that's going to be on it, as well as a rollout, pull-out drawer and a rollout structure on top to allow easy access to the equipment. So that's the cost difference on that one. And then 2 Toyota Camrys, which will be assigned to the Detective Division. These vehicles will again be purchased through Young Automotive, each in the amount of $28,409. No other bids were on any of these vehicles due to Young Automotive Group having the state contract. We are not in a position to add to our fleet, so these vehicles will be replacing our aging fleet. So we have 6 vehicles that we'll be selling. A 2016 Ford Explorer that currently has 108,000 miles on it, 2 2018 F-150s, about 77,000 miles on each of those, a 2019 Dodge Durango that has 75,000, a 2019 Toyota Camry that has 84,000, and then a 2022 Toyota Camry that has already been sold, and it was a total loss in a traffic accident. The police department and city manager has already reviewed this staff report, and at this time, I respectfully request your approval to purchase these police vehicles in the amount of $248,373.
Thank you. Any questions, council?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. A motion to approve the purchase of 6 police vehicles in the total amount as stated.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here tonight, Lieutenant Smith. Okay, Charles Benson, we get to hear a lot from you tonight. We're glad you're here, and thanks again for your crew's awesome work on 5th South.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, I come before you this evening to ask for some equipment replacements that we're looking at. First item we have, we're looking for 2 maintenance trucks, the 1-ton trucks that we use to go around and do the maintenance on the potholes or whatever we're working on at the time there. We're replacing a couple of our older trucks in there. We found 2 Ford F-350 chassis from Young Ford on the state contract, as well as the dump bodies from Young Commercial. For the amount of, the trucks are $109,794, and the dump bodies are $36,658.06 for a total of $146,452.06. These are in our 10-year capital plan replacement projects that we have going in there. And this report was reviewed by the streets director, public works director, and the city manager as well. The staff recommends that we approve the purchase from Young Automotive Group for both of those for a total of $146,452.06. Do you have any questions on any of that?
Thanks.
I do have one.
Okay.
So Charles, these are a smaller size than our plow trucks. Is that
Correct.
right?
Yeah,
So
these are 1-ton
probably-
trucks.
These are probably not eligible for naming like the plow trucks will be.
We could name anything you want. If we had
It's
to,
just-
yes.
It's
But yes.
just for fun.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Mayor, I'm happy to make a motion that we approve the purchase of 2 1-ton dump truck chassis and 2 truck bodies for the trucks for the total amount of $146,452.06.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Price Hewish. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item 14.
Thank you. Moving on, we are now looking at replacing 2 of our plow trucks. We consulted the state bid and found 2 International HV 650 trucks, chassis, on the state contract as well, and then the 2 dump bodies and snowplow packages as well that are on the state bid for $175,741 on those. So with the combined for 2 of them, on each of them, it comes up to the chassis bodies from Rush Truck would be $303,504.14. The dump bodies and snowplow packages with wings from Young Commercial Fleet for $351,482.82 for a grand total of $654,986.96. This report's been reviewed by the Public Works Director and the City Manager. This equipment replacement is part of our 10-year capital plan, and we've been planning on this and have the budget in the fiscal 26 budget. So it'd be our staff's recommendation that we purchase this equipment as quoted.
You know, Mayor, these are really nice, expensive trucks, and they do such an important job. It's really too bad that they're just named HV 615.
I think they're happy to be simply named.
I don't know. I feel like the great work they're going to do plowing our streets, they should have a name like a noble, like you'd give a noble steed. So I'm happy to make a motion to approve the purchase of these two fine HV 615 trucks.
Excellent. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Councilwoman Child. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item 15.
Okay, this is from our stormwater department. So this is, we need to replace our 1998 Vector truck. It's served us well over all these years. It's used to help in cleaning our 74 miles of storm drain in the city, as well as the inlet boxes, the outlet boxes, and all of the maintenance that's along with them. So the stormwater department consulted the state purchasing contract and found the contracts with Gap Vac. So that would be the body of the truck, the tanks, the vacuum system, and all of that, and as well as the flushing system. And then we found the truck chassis from International that meets the needs of that as well, from Rush Truck Center. And so the truck chassis is $161,493.02. The Gap Vac body from Olympus Equipment is $438,620 for that part of the chassis. So the total truck would cost $600,113.02.
And I'm assuming that you're guessing that this would be good for many years to come.
We've managed to keep the other one working all this time, and it's just kind of worn out now. And so this one I expect to last at least 15 to 18 years.
Would you be keeping the other one around as backup, or would you be selling it?
Oh,
or?
that one would have to go away. It's seen its end of life on
Okay.
that truck.
Okay, any questions for Charles on this one?
I have a technical question. It is not about a name. I had always thought these were like kind of one piece, all contained units, but it's actually a separate truck and then like a piece of equipment that's mounted to the back that does the.
Correct. It's from two different vendors. You have the transportation part and then the actual working equipment part of the trucks.
Okay. I
Same-
was
same
finding
type
that
thing on the plow
confusing.
trucks.
Okay. That it's kind of two pieces that have to be put together to make one thing that does the job. Okay, that was it. That was my question.
Thank you. Good question. Yeah.
I do have a question. Could we take a tour of one of these sometime? Could we see how this works?
Absolutely. You're always welcome down at the shop anytime.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone ready to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the purchase of the stormwater cleaning truck, the chassis, and the Gap Vac body for a total of $600,113.02.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you. Item number 16, Charles.
So now we're looking at our side loading garbage trucks. We have 5 of them that are out every day on the first line trucks, and we have a rotation schedule. These trucks are based on 6 years. They're picking up 800 cans, between 700 and 800 cans a day.
Wow.
And emptying all that. So there's a lot of moving parts in there that are wearing, and that's about the life of those trucks. So we keep those trucks for 2 years in reserve, so we have good spares that we can, one needs to go down for maintenance, or it kind of worked out in the past where we had them spares there that we could start the recycling program. So it's worked out to keep that rotation working for us. The availability of these bodies and chassis is kind of limited, so we've only got the Peterbilt chassis, which is available to us. It would come in the right time frame for $212,969, and the debris refuse body from Signature Equipment for $169,850, for a total of $382,819. Now, this is kind of locked in right now, but we don't know what these tariffs might do because the debris body actually comes from Canada. So we're keep a close
So
eye
you're
on this.
confident that you'll get this price?
We're pretty confident that this should be locked in at this price, but next year's, I have no idea what it might be.
Okay.
What's the delivery timeline?
We're hoping it would be about October, November, but the one from last year was actually more like March when we got it.
Okay, any other questions?
Well, here's hoping the crystal ball on tariffs holds. I'll make a motion to approve the purchase in the amount of $393,000.
Is there a second?
Actually, and I just gave you the total.
382.
Yeah, I just gave you the total budget. I liked the even number for once.
Oh, thank you.
382,819 is what I'll approve.
Okay,
Make a
thanks.
motion
Good
to
catch.
approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Councilwoman Child. Any, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, and your last item, Charles.
Okay, yes. The last item we have is a loader for the landfill. So this is replacing our 2006 John Deere 624J loader out there. We needed a smaller loader than what our big Hitachis and that's used in the refuge to work in our composting area. So it's more size to regular trucks, pickup trucks, so that it can help load those as well as processing the equipment there. We found on the state bid contract in there a 724P that will work for the size of the landfill. This is just a little bit bigger than the 624, but this will work really well. And it came in at a very good price option in there of $392,000. No, sorry, 309. Now I'm doing the budget numbers. $390,528 on the state contract.
Sorry, I got you all messed up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any questions on this one?
I'll make a motion that we approve the purchase of the John Deere 724 loader in the stated amount on the state contract.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes.
Okay,
Thank you
Mayor
so
and
much.
Council.
All right, now, Alan Johnson, we get to consider approval of the purchase of tapered steel for the Northwest Substation.
Yes, Mayor and Council, it's great to be here tonight. We're discussing our Northwest Substation project, which we've been bringing lots of items to you over the last year or so. And I'm happy to say these aren't the last two, but there will only be one more in August, and then we should have everything. So we're down to 3 items here. But the item that we're here to discuss is the first one is the tapered steel. And we broke up the steel in 2 parts. The tapered steel would be the dead end where the poles, where the wires will dead into it. It's a little bit different concept. They're round, they're built, and then they taper up, and they hold the structure of the weight of the wires coming in. And that's why these 2 are broke out separately. We did go out to bid. These items have been pulled by the Power Commissioner, but we was not able to get the bid opening in time for the Power Commission meeting, so we had to send it out. We do have verbal or email confirmation from the Power Commission to move forward. So it would be the staff and the Power Commission, and we had our engineering firm that has went over this and believe that the low bid from Clute, excuse me, and we have used them before. They're a good thing, so we'd like to recommend the low bid for this tapered steel for the substation for $145,965. And I might say between the 2 steel, with all the tariffs and stuff that we were talking about, these are about $12,000, is all higher than we had anticipated, not like the last one we brought to you, but this one is a little bit high, but like I say, it should have everything we need. The tariff, they believe they should be able to get them here. This item is going to come close to the end of December. And so it'd be our recommendation, we move forward with the low bid from Clute for the $145,965.
Thank you. Council?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the bid from Clute for a total of $145,965.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next item.
All right, the next one would be the structural steel where you mount the switches and the bus and all the other connections it takes to build inside the substation. And again, we did send that out to bids and did receive several bids back, and it would be the Power Commission staff and the ECI and the city managers approved it for the low bid from Clute for the structural steel for $40,173.
Move to approve.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Price Hewish. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you so much. And now is there, before we adjourn, just a quick question for the council about, is everyone available for the July 22nd council meeting?
Yes.
Okay, 2 weeks from tonight. Okay. Okay, excellent. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilman Bradshaw, and is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 We are adjourned.